today we're going to be talking about marketing and growth. And that's kind of where I find my passions. And so that's why Dave brought me in to help out with this particular presentation. So Lynette did a great job explaining kind of who I am. But the gist of it is that I'm a startup person. I've been a part of the startup ecosystem for a long time, almost 25 years. I've had the good fortune and being blessed to be part of 3 or 4 different journeys that have resulted in either an IPO or an acquisition. And so that's been a pretty amazing experience so far. And I love the startup process. I'm fairly sure that I'm obsessed with it. Starting something, answering a question, finding a problem that hasn't been solved. So that's why I love to work with other startups. I do some investing and I do a lot of advising. And I have this innate passion around getting in, clean sheet of paper. How do we find the answers that no one else has found? I've been fortunate to have a career that overlapped with internet and digital and mobile. And so I look for ways that those technologies can help to transform experiences and make things better, faster, cheaper, more engaging. And I do have this podcast. I encourage everybody to check it out. Founders Unfound, it's called. And we interview tech founders. Right now, we have a series on Black tech founders. So please check that out anywhere you listen to podcasts. So a little shameless plug there. Okay, so we're talking about marketing. And our agenda here is to talk a little bit about a framework. I find that when we approach marketing, it helps for us to sort of break it down so it doesn't seem so mysterious or like it's some mystery why and how people interact with us as customers. We'll talk about channels, talk a little bit about the funnel, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the tactics that you can use. And I know that you're all very seasoned business people, so some of this may seem, rudimentary or simple, and I apologize for that. But I always like to make sure everybody's at the same level playing field in terms of understanding, so that as we get into the Q&A, everybody feels comfortable with the framework and the context. So first, just to make sure that we're all conscious of the realities that go on outside of us right now, and it's no more prominent, has been no more prominent than it is today. COVID-19 and the coronavirus has affected us in many, many, many ways, and certainly on a personal level, and I'm sure in your communities, the impact has been just completely intense. But from a business point of view, one thing I wanted to say is that the things we're going to talk about still matter, but there is some context to provide around what's happening today. I do think there's some opportunities that have emerged. Aside from the being able to support first responders and the dealing with the crisis itself, there's this additional effect that's happening where people are changing the way they live, the way they work, how they connect with each other. We're doing this, via Zoom. There's a good chance that we would have been doing it live or in person if it wasn't 2020. And so some of that is gonna last. It's gonna stay after the pandemic is in our rearview mirror. So it's good to be thinking about both the short term and the long term and the opportunity that may emerge for your particular business. Customers are struggling. I mean, we all know that financially, health-wise, mental health, the ability to retain work, to find new clients and customers for themselves. Everybody's struggling. Competitors are struggling too. So you're not alone as a business. So just know that this is not all falling on your shoulders. There is some potential efficiencies because lots of people pulled back their marketing budgets this year. There is an ability for you to maybe come in and be more efficient. The prices of advertising and so forth are down because supply is a lot more available. And then this idea of cooler heads prevail. Um, in my discussions with many companies throughout this year, it's really amazing to see the difference in reaction to what's going on. And of course, it's stressful, worrisome, and intense. But if you can find your way to being even keel and try to find ways to find optimism and momentum to move forward, the companies and business people who can do that, I think, are the ones that are going to be able to thrive as we come out of the pandemic. Some obvious challenges. People are distracted, right? Still to this day, we have the pandemic. We had this big election. We have this, social protests and unrest. The climate. This depending on where you live, you've had hurricanes or fires or earthquakes. So there's a lot of things distracting people. So have patience, have empathy around that. Whole industries are pretty decimated this year. If you're in the travel and hospitality world, if you do anything where people came together in person, from restaurants to conferences, those industries are struggling mightily. And kind of the opposite of the marketing spend opportunity, businesses and consumers are clutching on to money pretty tight. Everybody's sort of in that hunker down mode. So just know that it's probably pretty obvious that people's spending is a little harder to convince. And then uncertainty. Uncertainty, there on an individual level, we all have our different appetite for uncertainty and risk. I think as a business world and in a marketplace, uncertainty tends to introduce a lot of friction. So you see it in the stock market when things are uncertain. There's a retrenchment, and when something happens where there's some certainty, like there's an announcement about a vaccine, then that reduces some of that uncertainty supposedly, and people get more optimistic. So I just wanted to set that stage because I think it's important for us to understand and to acknowledge that like I said, my career spans 25 years. This is my third financial recession / downturn. So there's a lot of things that can continue to happen throughout different cycles, but I wanted to make sure that we just acknowledge that we're in a different environment here in 2020. So what is marketing? Again, just the basics of how Dave and I view things. Really, marketing is about what is the value that you have? How do you convey that? What's the message? And does that message resonate with the people whom you're trying to convince to be a customer, right? Do you put them at the forefront of the story? How do we improve their abilities, their experience, their lives, their professional endeavors? And then this is key, is it repeatable, right? And so something that has some sustainability to it. And from a strategic point of view, until you sort of really understand in great clarity your messaging and value proposition and how it resonates, you want to be out there testing, pushing things out, letting potential customers, prospects, candidates, and the general public or community respond back. Does it resonate, right? And then inbound is this kind of a secondary strategy. And really, the big difference between those two things, aside from the tactics, is your ability to control the velocity, right? And the time, right? And I think compressing time to finding outcomes or learning is really a big part of what you want to do with your marketing, at least from the experimental stage. Okay, so framework, pretty basic. Start with a, what, who, why you, and where and how. And I think this is an interesting exercise that I would encourage you all to go through as we go through these slides and explain what this means, to do this for your own business, to take some time, maybe an hour or so at some point, and just try to articulate these things because I think it helps tremendously. And a lot of people, when they talk about marketing, hop right into advertising and some of the tactics you can use. And I can't emphasize enough that this exercise helps you um, to prepare to make those things the most cost beneficial, the most time efficient, the most impactful that they can be. And so if you don't know these or don't have a good sense of these elements of this framework, it's really you're building a marketing house that doesn't have a good foundation. And so it may stand, it may not stand. And so this is really important to go through. So we start with the what. So obviously you have a product or a service, right? And it may sound simple to describe it, but I see so many times that people use words like solutions or impact or um, uh, we provide a set of tools, right? And those are good conceptual ways to describe things, but it doesn't always capture what the user sees or the audience for that message sees, right? What does it mean to be a tool? Is it a tool like a hammer? Is it a tool like a piece of software? Is it a tool like a process? And so I like to ask the question, what is the job that I do for my customer, right? What is the thing that I help them achieve that they either can't do without me or don't do as well without me, right? And if you put it in that mindset, it really gets to this sort of outcome orientation. And so your product service obviously serves value. And so I think identifying in what I call here product terms, speed, convenience, um, efficiency, information. What is it that you bring to the customer? What is in terms of the outcome, right? And then, like I said before, reflecting the language the customer uses. So if it's speed, does the customer say, "Wow, this used to take me weeks, now it takes me days"? That's what it means to them, right? Is that this process or this activity they used to take weeks and now it takes days. That's what they mean by speed, right? Um, Convenience or efficiency. Wow, this thing I used to do took me 12 steps. Now it's down to 2 and it takes me 10 minutes, right? So really honing in on how do you describe what your product does in terms of the job it does for your customer and reflecting the outcome in the language that they would feed back to you if they said, if you ask them, what does this do for you? So who? Obviously, this deals with the, the market that you're going after. Who's your product for, right? Or product or service, right? And from a market definition point of view, I like to think about this as broad as possible. And from that I mean, you may serve a specific segment or set of segments, but there may be others that are adjacent to those segments that might be interested in your product or service with a, either an effort to reach out to them or with some slight adjustments to the product. And so you want to understand where's the big picture opportunity for your product or your service or your company, right? At the same time, you can't serve everybody at the same time. Most of the time, that market, it's hard to serve unless you're a very big company with a lot of resources. It's hard to take on that whole market at once. So who are the customer segments that you want to focus on now? And defining those by whatever mechanism that you can identify them by. So is it, if you're a business to business company, is there a certain size? Is there a certain industry? Is there a certain person or profile inside of a company that you're targeting? Right? If you're a consumer business, is it regional or geographic in nature? Is it demographic? Is it in terms of age or gender potentially? Is there things? Are you targeting people who are single, people who are married? So there's lots of ways to sort of slice that, but it's important to understand how you segment that. And then, from there, you want to get into these personas. Personas essentially are coming up with an example. So an example of somebody who is representative of your customer segment, but with some additional descriptors that talk about where they are and why they need you. And so Lynette mentioned my company, Wisely. What we do is we create sort of an onboarding training wheels type approach for young professionals in India. And so people who are out of college, but not yet into their sort of late 20s, where in India is the time when you start thinking about getting married and having kids and buying a house. And so these are folks that have income, but not complicated financial lives quite yet. And they're pretty much ignored by the traditional financial community because they don't have mortgages, they don't have insurance, they don't have big credit needs, they haven't done a lot of investing. So our persona is, for instance, a person who is 23, just out of college, lived on a fixed budget with their family for a long time, now has more income than their parents ever made, wants to be, live life like every other zillennial and millennial, experience life. They aren't necessarily looking to live on, saltine crackers for 40 years so that they can travel when they retire. At the same time, they have this concept of saving that they want to do, that their parents have instilled in them. And so that's the level of nuance that we get to with my company in terms of defining personas. And because we know that that's the person who really has the most appetite for what we're delivering. And then targeting is really this idea of what are the things that I can use to find, for instance, that person that I just mentioned. So can I go to his or her company and partner with their HR department to reach out to them, right? So I could use company position, right? There's just like in the United States, there's a bunch of companies in India that are big companies. So the equivalent of like an IBM or an Amazon or General Motors, right? Can I use that as a filter? People who are, within 5 years of starting work at those big companies, right? So these are things that I can identify that I can use to target people who those attributes I can use as somewhat of a hack to get to this persona, because people don't walk around with the tattoo on their forehead that says I want to experience life, but I also want to save money, right? That's not something that people wear, right? But so this is pretty important. So this is the big one for me. Why do they care? What's the core need, right? And so we talked a little bit about the product in terms of the job it does. This gets to what is the reason they want that job to be done, right? And so there's a great sort of exercise that people like to do when they're doing research called the 5 whys, which is essentially digging in almost like a 5-year-old would do. Why is that? Well, why is that? Well, why is that? So that you can get down to these core essence of what is the thing that they're trying to achieve or trying to try to get to, right? And so an example might be, and this is used in a book called Talking to Humans, which is a great book if you ever want to it's like a 40-page book. You can get it on Amazon. It's a great book to use in terms of doing customer interviews and discovery with how to figure out what customers like and don't like. So the example they use is email. Why does someone like and use email? Well, the first why might be, well, to send and receive messages to other people. Why is that important? Well, I need to be able to communicate for my job and basically prize people of what's going on and give them updates and also get those updates back, right? And then if you keep asking those whys, it gets to the core essence of why all that's important is I don't want to feel out of the loop. And so I want to be on email as frequently as I can be so that I don't miss anything. Right. And so now you're getting into sort of like almost an insecurity or um, a confidence or an esteem issue where somebody wants to make sure that they're well informed and in a timely manner, they know what's going on. Right. And so we start with this idea of, email was, hey, I need to send and receive messages, right? Down to this more inner why of, I want to feel the confidence that I know what's going on, right? And so try to go through the exercise of saying what is the heart of the problem, right? In terms of what is it that the customer is yearning to get fixed? What itch do they need scratched? What core thing internally are they trying to get to, right? And so there's things like fear, lifestyle, delight in entertainment, a sense of belonging, reputation, pain relief, confidence, right? These are the things that these are the motivators for why people will seek the job you can do for them. And if you address it head on, it can be the reason why they choose you, right? And particularly if you're looking at the option of why do others fall short in helping to deliver against this problem, the answers to this problem, right? And so again, the thing that we get to from my company Wisely is that 23-year-old, yes, they want to save money and they want to they want to feel like they are being thrifty and not wasting their money. And that gets to this heart of like they want confidence. Most of them are smart, but they haven't spent a lot of time looking at what to do with their finances, and so they feel this tension of I know I could figure this out, but I don't want to spend the time, or I don't have the time to spend, understanding, what an ETF is, which is a basic investment vehicle that people use right now, right? And so it's confidence for them, but it's also pride. They want their parents to be proud of them, right? And when they tell their parents, "Yeah, I make X amount of money," yeah, somehow at the end of the month, I don't have any money in my account. I spend it all, right? That creates this sense of disappointment, right? And so we go after that, trying to like build confidence, be a trusted guide who comes alongside you to say, "Hey, we can help you. We're not going to be your parents. We're not going to scold you or make be this sort of like um disparaging, create fear. We're going to come alongside and say, hey, you can do this. We can help you with the information you need and the savvy you need, and we'll also set up the right tools to let you do this as easy as possible." So getting at that heart of the problem, this is so critical, and a lot of companies skip over this because they get right into like my product does the better, faster, cheaper, but they don't really understand necessarily what's at the heart of why the customer wants that. So the flip side of that is why you, right? I talked a little bit about what alternatives and competitors do and where they fall short. And so it's really important to be able to articulate what's your differentiation. How are you different, right? How are you unique in the marketplace, right? And you can do that. You can describe that in terms of value, which has two kind of goalposts that go together with it. Offering, which is sort of like the core thing we talked about, the product and the why, the differentiation there, and then the price, which is for the money the customer will spend, what are they getting, right? And I think they both have to go together. I think if you have an offering and the price doesn't fit, then you won't have people commit, right? If you have a 5-star hotel and the lowest price room is $2,000 a night, people will probably say, "Yeah, this is a great hotel, but I don't think I'm ever going to spend $2,000 a night," right? If you at the same way, if you just focus on price, I mean, the basics of economics say that price, if the only differentiation is price, then people get into this, basically price war with your competitors, where you basically drive the cost down or the price down to either at or below your cost, and then nobody wins, right? And so it can't be just price. Try to describe the evidence for your differentiation, right? And for you as a company, why you are the best to serve this, right? Have you been in it for a while? Have you shown that you've been able to grow and add customers, happy customers, right? Are you participating in the community in certain ways that gives you some stature, right? Or some recognizability, right? And then this idea of credibility, reputation, authority. Do you have a brand? Do you have others who endorse you, either explicitly or implicitly? Meaning, if someone came to them and said, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody to do XYZ," and you do XYZ, that you would be in the top three that would come in that person's mind. Explicitly would be more like, they reference you on their website, or they have a list of preferred vendors, suppliers, companies, right? And then authority and expertise, obviously, you can develop in parallel to serving customers by being, if you're at a conference and you're speaking, if you've written books, if you are, if you write a blog, or where you basically share your perspectives and insights with the industry in certain ways, that's gonna really elevate your stature and reputation and authority, right? And then reputation obviously also has the other side of it, which is integrity and treating customers well and partners well, and being a good corporate citizen. So the where and how, so places to find customers, essentially, and finding them when they're most essentially open to what you offer, right? And some of the ways that we can do that from an outward point of view: advertising, the search engines, social media, content creation and distribution, and then through other organizations where you can find them. One other thing that Dave likes to talk about quite a bit is this idea of how will they buy. So this is important to consider from a business model point of view. And so most of your businesses are pretty established, and so this is probably a pretty simple thing where you've already made the choices or set up the alternatives for this. But how somebody is going to buy from you can influence where you want to look for them and how you want to look for them. If you use credit cards or have sort of an online payment mechanism, that's different obviously than having an invoice where they pay later and they become a receivable. To use other channels and other partners to sell through, and then obviously there's the rhythm of payment. Is it a one-time payment? Is it a subscription? Is it an agreement to pay a lump sum, but they pay over time, quarterly or monthly? And so it's important to just understand this. And again, I'm sure that most of you have already thought through these alternatives and have chosen the appropriate ones for your company. But it's important to keep these in mind as we talk about the next ideas. Just gonna grab a quick sip of coffee. So advertising, it's when people talk about marketing, they usually think in their mind immediately about advertising, and so it is an evolving tool and market, and with new technologies, it takes on new looks and new feels, and there's both challenges and opportunities when that happens. The way I look at advertising, the traditional or offline world, which is television, radio, billboards, newspapers, other physical locations, the bus stops, right? So they create great awareness, and you have obviously the ability to do pretty granular targeting to geographies. They in fact are most of the time based upon a certain reach in a geography. Um, and so for that perspective, it's really excellent, right? Um, it's not great for experimentation in general because it's slow. It's slow to set up, and it's slow to change or adapt. And so, if you want a billboard in downtown New Orleans, it's going to be some amount of time and months to arrange for that, for them to put it up, for it to be there for a certain amount of time. And so if you're waiting to learn, do people see that billboard, do they respond to the message and the creative that we have, that's going to take a long time, right? And so for that reason, it's really the best place for you to put fuel once you know that people respond to certain messages, certain creative, certain campaigns. And so when you've got sort of that experimentation phase done, then it's time to sort of lock into traditional. This last point is something that people have been trying to do for 20, 30 years, but it's all the more important these days because even if you have proven messaging, it's still important to try and figure out if a specific advertising source or campaign is driving customers more so or in different ways than others. And so if you can figure out some way to add some kind of a code or a dedicated phone number or a dedicated URL for your website, even just when you have prospects, to check in with them and say, how did you hear about us, right? And when it's self-reported, some won't remember, some will get it wrong. They'll think they heard a radio ad when they saw an ad somewhere else, but try to make it as trackable as possible. Online, on the other hand, obviously has the ability to target, to do lots of experimentation. You can spend small amounts of money relative to offline and really learn a lot very quickly. You can test many different things at once and target different groups, and so it's really effective for that. Like I said, there's fast cycles, quick learning. It does have some challenges on the geographic side of things. It's not impossible these days to target people that way, but it's been less developed, and it's less mature in terms of its ability to focus exclusively in geography. So it doesn't preclude you, because I think most of you all have businesses that are geographic in focus, because, for instance, in search, you can do things like, I want to be, ice cream stores or ice cream shops in New Orleans, right? And so you can do things that help to address that, but it doesn't have the great maturity of geography like offline does. And then the price variance is going to be a lot wider. So some things are going to be super cheap, some things are going to be super expensive, and everything in between. And it's going to change pretty dynamically. Like I said at the beginning, we're in a time when supply of advertising is plentiful because people have pulled back their marketing budgets. But last year or the year before, it was probably the opposite, where demand was super high, supply was limited, and so pricing was at a premium. So search. Oops, sorry.
And before you go on,
Yeah.
a lot of the businesses that we work with in InvestNOLA, they're doing B2B business, right? There are sometimes opportunities that we're able to connect them to, right? But they're also competing in those opportunities with larger companies, right? So how is it that they make themselves known so that it's, you're not looking at them, or whoever the project owner is not looking at them as some smaller company who probably, can't do the job, right? How do they put themselves at that same level with some of those larger companies that they're going to have to compete with?
Great question, Lynette. And Dave, you can certainly chime in here if you want to as well. But I think this goes back to the why you, and I think this is all the more important when there's larger competitors out there or larger companies that are sort of in the same space. And so it's really important to establish, why is it that you're different? How are you different? And I think the reality is that it's actually refreshing for a lot of potential customers to know that difference as explicitly as possible, because it makes it very binary. Because if that's the difference that matters to you, if that's the why, you're going to go in that direction, right? You're going to come to the company that has what you're looking for. And so I think it's super important to go through the exercise of figuring out why you, and obviously there's a reason you exist, right, as a company, because there was a need that was being unfulfilled in some way, by alternatives or other direct competitors. And so being able to articulate that is super important, and that's going to cascade into the messaging that you would use throughout all the things we're about to talk about.
The other thing I'd just add to it, Dan, is let your customer tell your story for you, right? So there's a chance, rather than you telling your own story, let the voice of the customer, because you have customers. So let them tell the story about why you're good, why you're quality, why you're punching above your weight class. Because I think that'll be helpful too, as a mechanic to help tell your story. I mean, granted, if they're looking for somebody with 100 employees and you have 3, the answer is they would probably overwhelm you if you got the business. So you have to be careful about that one too. Sometimes there's a downside to it. But one of the things I look at is have a customer testimonial, or do a white paper. And by a white paper, I don't mean overthink it. I mean, I've done a bunch of phone interviews with folks, and Dan and I've talked about this on the marketing side. Like, there are experts in areas that I'm not an expert in. So what I've done is I've done an interview with them, recorded that interview on Zoom, had that interview transcribed on Fiverr, right? And then posted the interview, and the halo effect of that made me an expert, even though I really was interviewing the expert. So think about it as a chance to, how do you punch above your weight class that way? And that's super helpful too.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that in the content side, but that was, part of the YU we talked about was reputation, credibility, expertise, sort of your authoritativeness, which can be magnified and amplified with certain tactics. And I think that can go a long way too. There's a reason that, there's local, fill in the blank, right? I mean, there's big companies now that do lots of things, but those big companies don't always understand a specific market. For instance, they may not understand at the sort of specific need level. So somebody who serves Kansas City and New Orleans and Dallas and Chicago and Boston and New York may have a one size fits all, and it works pretty well, but there may be a need in any one of those cities that says, well, we have things that go a little differently here. Maybe the city has different regulations. Maybe there's maybe the weather has an impact here that company doesn't understand, the seasonality of what goes on here, right? And so there's an opportunity just at that level to hop in and say, hey, we live here, we're part of this community, we understand those differences, right? And like Dave said, having your customer be the testimonial for you is the ultimate, sort of marketing win, right? Is to have that evangelism, that sort of, somebody's like, yeah, I needed this company helped me, and would recommend them over and over again. Does that help, Lynette?
Yeah, actually it does.
Okay, great, great. So the next thing is search. And Dave's certainly much more of an expert on this than I am, but the idea in search is you have to be proactive about it, but it's also a longer term activity. There's really two parts to it. There's search engine optimization, which is basically how the search engines find you and making sure that the right things that you say about yourself and the words you use and the metadata, as they call it, is appropriate and consistent, is important. And then the search engine marketing, which is basically using the search engines as an advertising vehicle. And for those of you who use search, which I'm sure is everybody, you'll see, the results come in. This is an ad, and then this is the natural, organic, or algorithmic results, right? And so the search engine marketing obviously is more of a paid placement activity, whereas search engine optimization is usually either yourself or you find somebody to help you. It's kind of a one-time effort and then some periodic maintenance to make sure that all of your outwardly facing elements, whether it's your website or a blog or social media, are optimized so that the search engines will pick up the right things for you, right? The percentage of people who go to like the second and third pages of search results is pretty low. And so that's why it matters is if you're let's say you do driveway repaving and refinishing in New Orleans, and you want to be, if somebody says I need my driveway fixed in New Orleans, you want to show up high on that list of results, because they may go to a second level, they may not. They may get in national players or players that have large spending budgets that show up. They may get other people who have directories or lists of people who do driveways, right? And so you're competing from an algorithm point of view with some of these other folks. And so it's really important to try and figure out, if you're going to be on the web, you want to do it the best way you can, which is making sure the search engines are elevating you for the things that matter in terms of what people are searching for, so they find you, right? And so this has a lot to do with keywords and, like I said, the metadata and being consistent. So if you call yourself driveway finisher versus driveway repaver versus driveway solution versus whatever you want to call it, residential housing egress, I don't know, whatever it is, using the same words over and over again so that that consistently shows up is another thing that usually we don't think about when we're creating materials or copy or the wording we want to use in different places, because we usually do it at different times. So a lot of times you need somebody to come in and say, yeah, when I looked across all these things and audited it, like, you call things, one term here, and that same thing, you call it a different term here. And over here, you don't really mention it at all. And it seems like you should reiterate it. So that's an important aspect to do. And that's the good news is there's many folks that can do that.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick hack on that, Dan. Like so with Lynette, when we did the first cohort, one of the things we did was we pulled all of the websites for all of the companies that went through it. And then I had a group on Fiverr, Fiverr, which I've talked about before, do a search engine analysis and search engine optimization plan. So they look at your website, tell you the internal challenges, the external challenges. You send them 3 or 4 of your competitors, and they'll analyze their sites as well. And they'll tell you, like, these are the keywords you should be searching for. These ones don't matter. And I think you could probably run one of those reports. It'd take about 2 days and probably $25 or $50. So the good news is you don't have to be an expert on this one. You literally have to go to somebody and say, hey, I need somebody to do a website analysis and search engine optimization analysis on Fiverr. There's a ton of them. Here's my site. Here's my 2 or 3 competitors. What should I do differently? And for $25 or $50, they'll give you a plan. Then you can take that plan to either the same person who did the work or take it to somebody else. So I'll give you an example that I used for, I have a book coming out. So one of the things that I did was I took the chapter headings of the book and I posted it as a job and said, hey, I need to take these chapter headings, which is, 3, 4, or 5 words, and I need them to be optimized for SEO. Like, how would you write this same sentence differently if I wanted it to rank high on search? So I hired 2 competing people to actually tell me what to do with it. And I got back some great feedback about what would increase the search on those ones. So some search words but drive higher amounts of traffic than others. But again, for $25 or $50, you can get an answer to this question and then start actually moving it along.
Yeah, great suggestion, Dave. Thanks. So social media, a lot of people look at social media as this amorphous thing, and it can get a little intimidating. So the one thing to understand is that different channels have different purposes. Things like Facebook are more about community. Things like YouTube and Pinterest are around content and searchability, right? Twitter is and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok, and their shareability is a big aspect of it. And so different channels have different, I wouldn't say necessarily perfect purposes, but in terms of the main way that they can serve you. And so it's a place to experiment for sure. The one thing again is that it does take some time, and so be prepared for a couple of months of effort. It's very much like anything online. You put it up there. It's not like everybody comes rushing to you, but it's definitely something that can be pretty impactful and a good lever for creating business and for creating the awareness about you as an entity. And we talked about the why you in terms of content and credibility. So one of the things to be knowledgeable about is that customers will use it, or potential customers even, as customer feedback. So you have to sort of be vigilant about watching what's going on your social media handles, or having somebody do that, because people will just use it as a way to either voice. Hopefully, they use it to voice their celebration of you, but they also use it to complain. And so you have to sort of be ready for that and not be taken aback by that. It will happen, and it can be a blessing in disguise, because people will tell you things that maybe you need to address, or that is something that you can fix, right? It's not like an ad where it comes and goes. Posts can last forever. Be conscious of that. If you're doing things that have other social aspects to it, political or religious or anything like that, just make sure that you are thinking about that, how that resonates with who you are and your brand. Because it's even if you take it down, things these days can sort of stick around. The other aspect of this, which I think people find effective, is really use it as a way to engage people and to offer things that don't have a cost. So information, insights, um, progress. If there's things where, like, if you're a B2B service and you have customers who have something that they're celebrating and you want to shout them out, use it as a way to do polls. Polls are very popular. If I had a choice between A and B, which would you choose, right? And that A and B can be something that's related to your business or related to your industry. And so there's ways that you can find a way to sort of, in a sense, quote unquote, market yourself, but you're doing it in a way that you're not essentially just making an ad that is formatted to fit in social media. You can do some of that too. I mean, I don't think you should shy away from that completely, but I wouldn't count on it as an ad format, because I think it can be less effective that way, for sure. And they do have specific places where you can actually create ads that are designated as ads. And so that's different than posting or putting something out in your own social media content stream. The big ones are Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Especially if you're in a business to business, LinkedIn is it can be an interesting one for sure. And Twitter probably is the second one. Instagram, Facebook tend to be a little bit more consumer oriented. And then these other ones, which people don't really dig into that much, Quora is a place where people ask questions, and then the community can answer those questions. So you can get a bunch of wisdom of crowd kind of answers to questions. Reddit is very much kind of online communities. So subreddits you may have heard of. So there could be a subreddit for people who like vintage GI Joes or something. I mean, I think there's a subreddit, I think, for pretty much anything. And there are communities that like to engage in a very deep way around a particular topic, hobby, subject matter. You have to be participatory in those communities. You can't just show up and say, hey, I have this service. If you want it, come check us out. They tend to frown on that. Pinterest is a very image oriented. People create image galleries and use it for imagery. It is probably one of the bigger search engines that people don't know about. So people will just go search for things. So if there's an imagery aspect to your business at all, you might want to look into that. And then YouTube, I think most people know it's videos and video content. And so I think the takeaway for social media is start small, commit to doing something consistently for a while to get a feel for, is my prospect base, is this a place where they live? Is this a place where they want to engage with us? And is this a place where I can create some effective prospecting at the end of the day? So content. So Dave alluded to this a little bit. So this is becoming more and more a big part of how companies can differentiate themselves. It sounds like a lot of work. It sounds like sort of an extra hassle to some degree, at least it does to me sometimes. But it really is kind of the product beyond the product. It is the wholeness of who you are as a company and your brand. And I think people obviously who are your potential customers are searching for what you're offering. But this idea of creating content can be a powerful magnifier for your differentiation and for you to stand out both in an awareness standpoint, and from a differentiation standpoint. So some of the things to think about, again, it's about consistency. So I have a podcast. I started it last year, and I was it was on the side, so it wasn't my main thing. Obviously, I have a company, and so I was pretty inconsistent about when I did it, and I could see that people weren't finding it, and the people that were finding it, sort of would fall off because I wasn't being regular about it. And so this year, I just said I'm going to be very consistent about our episode schedule, and we're going to hold to it. And it may not be the best every time, but we're going to be consistent. And so I think that is really as powerful as the depth of the content. And so if you can do something where it's easier for you to create and it's more snack size, and you can do that consistently, frequently, that's better than writing a 20-page white paper every quarter, or sometime this year you write a white paper, and last year you wrote it in May, and this year you wrote it in September, right? And so to keep people's attention in this sort of crazy information overload world, being consistent is very important. Obviously, differentiation, being authentic and unique. So I guarantee that all of you have unique perspectives on some aspect of your business, some aspect of your industry, some insights, some viewpoint that others either don't have or haven't bothered to share themselves. And so dig into that and try to really understand from an internal point of view, what is that? and don't be shy about the fact that that is something that others don't talk about, others don't bring up, or nobody's written about it. And if you're authentic, people really respond to that a lot these days. You know, I'm a middle-aged guy, so it's less my generation, but certainly as you start to look at people who are younger, this idea of sort of living out loud and you know, potentially through social media, creates this desire to see authenticity, because it's pretty the meter for authenticity is can be high. So to try to find that place where your voice is unique, um, and just run with it. And to that end, pick your lane. What do you know better than anyone else? And again, I'm pretty sure that all of you, if you went through the exercise of digging into that, you'd find some things, and just kind of own that. The tools are out there to track how things go, and so try to figure out, yeah, this thing got read by 2 people. This other thing I did got read or viewed by 150 people. Okay, what's the difference between those 2? Okay, this one was more, this was a list of here's the 10 things you should do about blah, blah, blah. This other one was, here's my perspective on, you know, why the industry is going this way, right? So people were more interested in maybe the, you know, the action-oriented list than the sort of insight content, or vice versa, right? And then use that as a way to channel and to funnel your efforts around, well, if people like lists, let me make some more lists, right? And then in terms of channels, we've got email, blogs, white papers, reports, infographics, podcasts, and videos. I will tell you, podcasts and videos require a different level of production. And so there's more and more tools that are coming out now that simplify and reduce that time frame. But definitely think about the what you're getting into there, for sure.
Hey, Dan.
Yeah.
So for some of these folks, we went through probably a funnel when they went through the program with us last night. I was thinking in the 15, 20 minutes or 15, 17 minutes we have left.
Yeah.
Maybe the fun way to wrap this up is for you all, you can make Dan and I your VPs of marketing for a moment, not for all day, but you know, for Q&A. So given the channels and options and things that Dan's talked about already, if we came in as your VP of marketing today, I'll just open it up for you all to say, hey, here's what I'm thinking, and here's my product. Like, what would you do if you were me? Because between me as B2B and Dan as B2C, you've got a gazillion, we're just old, right? We've got a lot of experience on both of those categories. So I figured to just open it up to you all and say, like, ask us questions tell us about who your company is, and who you think your target customer is. And like, ask us the question, like, if you were me, what would you do for marketing in this one? And let us brainstorm with you.
Okay, don't be shy.
Now's your chance.
You got free VPs of marketing here. So there is someone here who has a real estate platform, gofindhome.com.
Okay. Hey, Ian, are you a marketplace where you're connecting buyers and sellers, or are you who's your target customer? Oh, we may not have it. So yes, new 7 funnel sites go through global LMS. So you're really focused on the listing side of the business. Is that correct? I'm watching the chat channel, so you guys know.
Uh-huh.
So all sides. Okay. So I think the marketplaces are unique because you need to have both sellers and buyers, and early stage of marketplaces have marketplaces at maturity are in parity, right? They're equal to buyers and sellers, but early marketplaces definitely favor sellers. So my guess is you'd probably over-index your marketing effort to go acquire listings first, and then it's a ratcheting process, right? I'm going to level this one up and level that one up. But on the you know, if you if you're monetizing mostly on the listing side, I was focused on listings first and then connecting it looks like to global MLS sites to then promote those listings out to find buyers. So I'd probably spend more of my marketing time initially on listings and then come back and say, what are the hot markets where I might be able to drive traffic on the buyer side would be the way I'd kind of stage that from a marketplace perspective.
And I would add that, I think a lot of times when you take that approach, there's ways to create secondary value for the supply side. So whether it's tools or information, or I'm not saying you have to become kind of a SaaS business just for them, but a lot of times the hook can be, we're going to create this marketplace and we're going to bring all these people in, but in addition to that, we're going to help you with X, Y, and Z, or offer you X, Y, and Z. And so there's things you can do that are coupled with the marketplace that draw in the supply side initially.
And then Ian, I would look at your book and your online school as primarily lead generation and traffic that would bring more listings in. So I would probably turn the both, books are great for generating interest and improving your brand, but they don't monetize particularly well, the dead tree business anyway. So I'd look at the online school as a way to how do I bring more folks in to make them more knowledgeable about what we do? And even if the online school broke even, I would look at it as a way to create more listings, because ultimately you're going to monetize that higher monetized level for sure. Cool. How about somebody else?
I think Gail had a question. She's an education consulting, specific focus on students with special needs. And she wants to know, in a virtual environment, what could she use for marketing?
So Gail, are you marketing to parents or to schools or to both?
Both. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Both.
Okay. So which one do you think is the shorter sales cycle and drives higher volume?
I'm thinking basically when you say students, I mean, that's to the schools directly because they are the institutions that houses the kids. So I'm thinking that would be the best way to reach out to get to more clients, if you will, their particular departments and all that specifically focus on students with special needs, which now is in a particular place because there are so many directions that you would go with a child with special needs because of the IEP. It's individualized. So.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I'd probably go after there is I would, and again, I obviously I'm a Fiverr fan. My guess is you can find lists of schools that have special needs programs nationally and lists of who you think and then use that school list to find contacts within the school that are specific around those needs. So I did a list recently that I had somebody on Fiverr pull, and I'm like, here's a list of 135 companies. I need a contact in Seattle with a title of VP of engineering. And I want their email and their LinkedIn profile link. And they pulled that list for me in about a day. And I think it was $150. So then I turned around and sent all those people an email and then turned around and connected with all those people on LinkedIn about the same time. So I would probably use that one. If you're selling to the schools, if you're selling directly to the parents, it's a much harder list to go get. Right? They're going to find you on inbound search versus in the case of the schools, they're going to find you on outbound marketing.
Okay.
I would suggest also that schools are hard. Schools are a hard nut to crack. You can figure out how to sell one school, one district, one department, and the one next door geographically can be a totally different journey. And so be conscious of that. I would say there's a lot of opportunity for the sort of the outer ring of the community that you can be hitting. So there's boys and girls clubs. There's usually somebody in every district or every school system that is responsible for special education. And so they tend to also have organizations. So I have a family member on the autism scale, and there's organizations where he lives that focus exclusively everywhere from K through 12 to adults. who have special needs, looking for work and housing and so forth. So there's organizations like that I would be, and you can find them online. And so connecting with those folks, I think, is a great way to sort of build relationship and then and sort of have awareness and credibility. The other thing I would say is content. This is a great place for you to think about having a blog or again, participating in other organizations if they have a venue or there's magazines or websites that focus on the people who work in in these industries or this particular area, where you could be a guest, right? Writer. You could do videos, and so that's going to go a long way, because I guarantee you that school systems are looking for solutions. And I don't know specifically about what you're offering, but this is an area that is still evolving, and it's going to require more and more expertise. It just, the realities of school systems is it is tough to sell to them directly. And so you almost want to create this wave of like, how can I do things where they keep hearing about me through, everything from the local community to the person in my school system to parents, PTSAs maybe. And so they like that, it's going to almost force them, like, I've got to reach out to this and see if they can help us.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else?
This is fun.
Great. We've got all this uncertainty. I know y'all have some questions.
And I know, Dave, you're gonna post the deck, right, in a SlideShare at some
Yeah,
point.
I'll post it in both SlideShare and then on my blog as well, and I'll make sure I get that back to Lynette, so you'll have all the resources there. But yeah, if there's anybody else that has questions like how you would go about doing your marketing, you kind of got a good spin the wheel with us at this point. The marketing wheel, that is.
Oh, we've got someone in from construction. I know we've got a technology company on that does business with the federal government. Who else do we have in the audience today?
Yeah, I think one of the big things I just remind you, especially if you're on the B2B side, make sure that the site that you're working on has a call to action. Like, contact us for more information, contact us to see a demo, contact us for get a quote. Like, don't put a call to action up there on the front of things, because I think it's one of the things that we forget about. We're like, we have a site, but it doesn't really serve us very well. So how do you make it so that that site actually creates, you can look at the traffic that's created and you can actually use it to convert on something?
Yeah. What kind of analysis, Dave? Because the question I asked earlier is something that we have a lot of, right? We are working with these private sector companies and the public sector to make sure that they're creating opportunities for our smaller companies, right? But now the smaller companies have to make sure that they're seen, that they're seen as a credible company, right? Private sector is normally dealing with the people they want to deal with, and sometimes they're thinking, oh, these smaller companies can't really compete, when I know that they can. So I mean, what can they do to make themselves more recognizable, more acknowledgeable, to make these larger companies feel that they're competent, that they could actually do the job?
Yeah, one of the things I like to do is to do a monthly, to Dan's point about email a little bit ago, is take those people who've, like, it's, the fact is I don't think about vendors very often. I think I'm engulfed in the things that are taking my time on my business. So if you send me a monthly update and say, hey, here's what we did last month. Hey, here's what we're doing this month. Here's where I could use your help. Or even, and it's not a long email, not a TLDR or too long, don't read, right, sort of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's really just it's a way to stay in front of potential vendors. That's pretty light lift, and it serves you because you're not writing one-off emails.
Mm-hmm.
So do something as a monthly update, like we just finished this project, but you have to have a regular cadence to it. If it's random, then you lose the value because people are like, oh yeah, I remember I met with that company, but I don't remember what they do, right? So there's a level of frequency that's super important. So I would definitely look at that too. So Ian just asked another question if there wasn't one. Hugh, did you have, how are you doing, Hugh? Good to see you. Oh, you don't have a microphone.
Oh,
Or
wait.
your microphone's on. Ah, phone. Got it. Did you have a question?
Got me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear
Yeah,
you.
we can hear you.
Oh, yeah, a quick
Well, that's
question.
Ian, not Hugh.
My fancy background on. When I'm talking to some people, especially like it's mostly real estate construction folks, sometimes they have a hard time just with the most basic technology they take for granted. What is the best way to like slow down the workflow or in the explanation of what product you have to sell? What's the best approach for that?
Yeah, I think one of the things, if you can do a demo, if you can send them information, if they're asking for a quote, right? So I'm looking for kind of all those things where it's like, I would think of it from the workflow, Ian, and what's the logical call to action that they should be doing next, right? And then think of it in that way, and then you can put it into a drip campaign where something goes out. So one of the things that's nice about email tools is you can automate 4 emails in a row over 4 months or 4 emails in a row over 4 weeks. So you can implement a rule process. So day 1, you sign up, you get a note from Dave that says, hey, thanks for signing up for my email newsletter. And then 7 days later, you get a note from, most people who sign up for a newsletter think about this, right? And then 7 days later, they get something else. So think about creating workflows that isn't about you creating work for yourself. So if you can do something once and have it serve you over and over, that's super helpful, right? So, but yeah, if you have folks who are like, it's best to pick up the phone, then you're back to how do I schedule with you when I don't use Calendly or something like that, or Zoom, because you definitely still have those that are there. But you have to also think about how much time you're spending on your sales process, right, for an individual customer, and make sure you're prioritizing that time spent around your best returns.
Okay, all right, cool, thank you.
So Hugh, give it one more shot.
Yeah, can you
Here you are.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
All right, good. So we're in the construction industry, selling electrical distribution, safety, traffic safety, lighting, and Internet of Things equipment, and we're having really good successes with direct municipal customers. We're doing a good amount with the city of New Orleans and state of Louisiana, as well as some direct customers up in the DC metro area. When we get new products or we get new lines under our company's wing, we represent them. We're trying to figure out the best way to engage with our customers. I've been sending out MailChimp emails to the customers, and we're not really getting, it doesn't feel like we're getting a significant amount of engagement in that. And I'm really trying to find a way, in this world of not being able to actually physically go and sit down with our customer. I'm trying to figure out what is a very efficient way of reaching our customers without seeming like a burden. Oh, here comes this guy's email again saying he's doing this, that, and the other. I'm trying to figure out like the best way to approach this issue that we have, because we want our customers to know that we have access to new product lines, but it's not really, we're not really getting the feedback that I thought we would.
Yeah, Dan, do you want to weigh in on that one?
Yeah, so thanks for sharing that, Hugh. I think that a couple things is the framework we talked about earlier, right? And so the why you and then the why of the customer, right? And so I think that maybe, and I haven't seen your materials obviously, but if you could elevate your introduction of new products and services about why they would care about it, why, and maybe there's some things that are so obvious, but I think this idea of sharing why you as a company are deciding to bring on those other additional products and services, why you think they're beneficial to your potential customers or your current customers, I think having that message is going to maybe resonate as much or more than just saying, hey, we carry X and Y and Z now. If you're interested, please reach out to us. And so it's a little bit more of the context. It's the same message at the end of the day, right? That you're carrying these new things or that you have additional products and services. But I think the context of why it would matter to them is really important. And so thinking about it from that perspective, I also think it has an ability, if you do it in an authentic way, to sort of um, create more enthusiasm for you as a company, because if they're saying, wow, they've really thought through, they're not just, adding to a catalog, they've thought through why this is important or that why this is meaningful to be an additional service. It kind of, in my mind, has the opportunity to sort of elevate you a little bit in terms of the way people think about it. And the other thing I would say is that it is potentially something where it's it seems like a lot of overhead, maybe to do a blog or to do videos, or to create the channels for those things. And so maybe there's places where you can go where you could do a one-off where you write a blog or you do a video, and it's somebody else's channel. So somebody obviously that is relevant to your business or to your customers. So if there's somebody who does all things municipal vendors or something, right? Where you could make a video, and again, that can be pretty impactful. And then you can use your email to say, hey, we just did this video with so and so. Check it out, right? If you want to know more about this particular product or service, we actually just started carrying it, because then you'll get some engagement. And so it's almost like you're selling them a little bit on the concept of the new product and service before you get to the next stage. And then having some sort of calls to action, or, hey, some urgency around it, like, hey, for the next 6 months, we've introduced this new thing. It's, some kind of deal, or, or free installation, or whatever you want to say, so that they see the reason, they see the context, they understand the why, they believe in you, and then they have a call to action with some, some urgency around it.
The only other thing I'd add, Hugh, is that if you have new products you're bringing on with new vendors, one of the things I think about is like queuing up a webinar where you're inviting your customers to hear a webinar by the vendor, right? So you get the halo effect of their brand, or like, oh yeah, Hugh's company's doing this, webinar. It doesn't have to be a big webinar, and frankly, you can record it and then repurpose it back to Dan's video point, right? So if you didn't come to the webinar, we're like, hey, here's a link to the video. So anything you can use for multi-purpose is definitely serves you better, because you just have to think about, like, okay, if I ask this vendor to do a webinar for me for 30 minutes, you send them the 4 questions in advance. You can invite people to the live version of it. If they don't come, you can send them a link to it. You can send it to Fiverr and have it transcribed into a white paper, right? Which allow them to index it on your website as well. So think about repurposing the same stuff into multiple things, and then you're testing it. Some of them will work. Some of them you look at and you're like, whoa, if that didn't work. But the whole point is there's no magic, single magic bean to it. It's just a question of, like, we just test. So Lynette, I know we're at end of time, so I don't want to go too much over, but I know we're a few over anyway. So thank you all for indulging us to go a few minutes over, but we'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. So yeah, well, I hope you guys got some great information today. I know I always end up learning a lot more than I thought I knew. But thank you all for coming. This was the final session for this fall series, and we will probably do another session probably February, March of next year, before we actually recruit a new cohort that would hopefully be starting in June of next year. So, I just wanted to again thank you guys for attending. We also invite you to check out our website at nolaba.org. We have created some valuable tools that we think may be helpful for your businesses. There is a NOLA Bit, which is a comprehensive data tool, lots of publicly sourced data there that you can access for free, all in one place. There is a Crescent City Biz Navigator. It's a navigation tool to help you find business organizations that can assist you locally. And then we have our opportunities portal. And that portal actually is where folks from the private and public sector are posting new opportunities for small businesses to respond to. So all of those things are available on our website. We also have information about InvestNOLA, the program that we run. So we implore you to go in and check out some information about that as well. So I'd like to first, thank our staff, Valerie Huntley and Naomi Herr, who's helped me to put all of this together. Certainly thanks to our sponsors, JP Morgan Chase Foundation, Kellogg Foundation, Cerdna Foundation, and of course our local partners, our procurement partners, financial partners, our advisory board. And then finally, a huge thank you to our wonderful presenters, Dan Kihanya and Dave Parker for an awesome, awesome presentation today. And so we invite you guys to continue to check in on our website. And as we move forward, we'll probably do another virtual series again early next year. We certainly will be inviting our presenters back. And yeah, so that's it. We thank you for coming, and you guys have a wonderful day. And this session was recorded, so it'll be on our website as well. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.